Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for the Superintendent's Report with Superintendent Jason Golden. I'm Carol Birdsong, Communications Director for Williamson County Schools, and for the next 30 minutes we will be talking about a variety of topics. It's been a while since we've been together, but a lot has gone on, so we have a lot of information to cover. Jason, first let's start with the board met last night. School Board, Williamson County Board of Education met last night. It was their first monthly meeting, I guess, since the election, and they elected a new board chairman and vice chairman last night.
Well, that's right, Carol. It's probably been about 6 weeks since we've done a recording, and we really try to experiment and communicate in as many ways as we can.
Yes.
But yes, our board meetings are now actually all online, right? And we are actually doing that with our policy committee as well. Last night, Nancy Garrett, who has been the vice chair for a number of years and also the policy committee chair, was voted on by the board as our new chair. And she succeeds Gary Anderson. Gary Anderson, of course, served the district for many, many years. This is really home for him, but he retired from the board, and Nancy Garrett has been doing a really, really good job in serving the board, serving the public, serving us.
She had been vice chair.
That's right.
So.
And so she is now the school board chair, and that's done September of every year.
Right. And then Casey Hall, congratulations to him as well. He was elected vice chair of the board. So a lot of business last night taken care of. And some of those things we'll cover in our discussion today, but there's really a wide range of topics that I want to make sure that we can get to, if at all possible. And of course, really most of them, if not all of them, evolve around COVID, because we are still dealing with COVID in Williamson County Schools, as we have since, I guess it's March of earlier this year. So it's still out there. But we have been in school for 6 weeks now, so we're rounding the bend at the end of our first 9 weeks. We have students on campus. We have students, 6,700 approximately, participating in the WCS Online program. So let's talk about on campus first, how we're doing there, and then let's talk about WCS Online.
Well, we did start with a staggered approach to returning to campus, and many remember our return to campus plan, our return to school plan. And so as we staggered our return, the numbers, the COVID positive test actually really did improve in the county. I think in large part to the mayor's mask order that finished us up through the summertime and then into school. Within a couple of weeks, we were able to return all our students to campus, and I'm really happy about that. We've talked about this for months, that there's really no substitute for most students in being on campus with that instruction. So we returned students to campus, and we staggered that with 6th graders and 9th graders just getting a day to acclimate themselves because they didn't have that opportunity last spring. So with that, what we've learned, and we actually knew it intellectually, but experiencing it is a different thing, that the positive cases trigger a quarantine process from the health department. So that's really been a big issue for us as we go through. It's really a touch and go, day-to-day kind of thing with us being on campus.
So that's, and so I want to say that. So some of the terms that parents, community members probably need to know is, we talk about traditional on-campus school. That's when all the children are on campus.
That's right.
We talk about WCS Online, and that's a program. And that's where you stay home and you do your coursework when you do your coursework, basically. But then we also talk about remote learning. And so that's when perhaps we need to close a school and we shift to remote. So I just want to make sure everybody knows those terms as we're using them.
Well, and so WCS Online, like you said, is a program with about 6,700 students. The individual families make a decision based on the semester. That was something that we created this summer because of the demand and because of the need. That many families said, in essence, I'm not at a spot where I can be comfortable being on campus with where the virus is and where the pandemic is. So we created that program really from scratch. We had some high school classes, but largely, especially for the middle and elementary school, we created a full-blown program just almost instantly.
Really, it was. I know we extended the deadline for people to make that choice to participate in online, and it's a semester commitment, and so families did have to commit. I think it's safe to say that we weren't expecting 6,700 families K-12.
Well, we had actually done a survey early in the summer, in May or so. We had a ballpark idea, but it was a lot. Now, it was not nearly as many as some other districts, some of our neighbors, but what we committed to was doing the best we could instructionally for our families, and that took a lot of work with staffing. And so we've had some ups and downs along the way as we start the program and get it running. And so I do want to thank our families for the patience with that. I'm so proud of our teachers and the work they're doing. Many of our teachers these first few weeks have been learning along with their students on the online program. The online program looks a little bit different by grade level and by class. At the elementary school, from a staffing standpoint, we were able to move individual teachers with full cohorts of students where they could actually teach the students largely in what we call a synchronous time along the schedule.
So you better explain what that means.
Yeah, synchronous means you're teaching one-on-one at the same time.
So like if you're
Asynchronous,
looking at your computer screen, you might be seeing your teacher there.
you would be generally interacting.
Okay.
Asynchronous, of course, is not at the same time.
You're doing it kind of on your own.
Yeah. Most traditional online classes, if you think about college classes, it's driven by your own schedule, and that's typically asynchronous. So from a staffing standpoint at the middle and high school, the bulk of that education has been asynchronous because we didn't have enough teachers to pull every particular course. Even at the middle school, there's licensed science teachers, licensed English language arts, licensed math on down the line, multiple math classes. So from a licensure standpoint, we couldn't just simply pull teachers out and do nothing but the online, largely speaking.
Okay. You mentioned briefly about our teachers. Let's talk about what they have been experiencing during this time, because they come back to school and they think, or they were hired over the summer and the spring, and they think, I'm going to be in the classroom. That didn't necessarily happen because we opened with remote, so they had to learn possibly a new skill set, right, to teach remotely, learn some new software or apps, applications, however you want to say it. Then with COVID, if we've had a quarantine, if you will, or isolation situation, they might have to transition to remote learning or to remote teaching as well. Then you throw in online, and like you said, we weren't staffed at middle and high. We have teachers who are teaching the traditional class and then picking up an extra class, if you will, to support the WCS online program.
Well, that's right. And many of our teachers are teaching what I think of as 2 or 3 preps. And it's not really the content area that they're preparing for necessarily, but it's how to teach. So we have our online teachers. Many of them at the middle and high school level are teaching a portion of their day or all of their day on campus. And then they're doing some preparation for how to teach online. So that's one preparation. The online is a second for many of them. Also, because of remote, a lot of times the way you would present some materials is going to look differently if someone is on a computer. So that's another preparation for a lot of our teachers. And I mentioned quarantine just a minute ago. What we found is that the health department's quarantine has caused a number of students to have to be off campus for as much as 2 weeks many times. And we are trying to maximize those students' participation in their class with their teacher who's teaching on campus. And so that's really a day-to-day, class-to-class work that our teachers are doing.
And sometimes you don't learn that a student or a group of students might be quarantined until that evening. And so our teachers truly have had to adjust and some have said, they've been teachers for quite some time, but some have said it's like being a first-year teacher.
Yeah.
I'm learning all over again.
Well, and so many, our teachers are so committed to what they're doing that they're going to push.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to do that extra because they just can't stand professionally not to do it.
Yeah.
And so I want to acknowledge them and thank them for that pressure. It's unbelievable what they're doing. I will tell you another cultural shift that I've seen is there is a lot more email communication from parents than I think we've ever seen before. Because there are so many examples of folks being either in and out or remote, that the traditional quick conversation with a group of people is really being replaced to a large degree with emails. And so I do want to emphasize to our parents to be patient with our teachers, because the volume of emails they're receiving, that many of them are receiving, is more than they've ever had, and often more than they can return in a particular day. It's a lot.
And communication, I think, has been a challenge through this whole process, on all ends and in all areas, because we are having to do things differently, perhaps, than we've done.
And we haven't been perfect. I want to acknowledge that. I mean, it's a constant effort with us trying to find ways to respond to these changing times.
Constantly adjusting.
And I want to acknowledge the tension that parents feel, because they're asking more questions, because there are more questions to ask,
Right.
really, than there ever have been.
That is correct. So that leads me to, today is an asynchronous day for middle and high school students, and then for the K-8 students at Hillsborough School. And our instructional leadership team, if you will, ask for this based on feedback from the principals and from the teachers because of the need of time. Can you explain really what that means?
Well, to the time point, what we've heard from our teachers, and it's been emphasized in so many ways, is that they need more time. And we've alluded to that with some of the extra work that they're doing. And so what we found is that we're going to have to find some outside-the-box ways to get them time within the school year. I've seen school systems in other states cut down on the length of their school year. I've seen school systems in our state use their inclement weather days for extra teacher time. What we're experimenting with is what we think of as a unique opportunity. Today, our seniors are actually taking the ACT on campus. That hasn't happened, to my knowledge, in decades, maybe ever, because last year the seniors could not take the test as juniors. And so we're having a senior test day today. We knew that was going to impact the campuses because they have to spread out to take the test. So we took this as an opportunity to experiment, to do a pilot with an asynchronous day where all students who aren't taking the ACT at the secondary level get assignments from their teacher. They do their schoolwork in an asynchronous way. At the same time, the teachers today have a mix of professional development, training, and planning time so that they can spend some time to see what it looks like. Spend some time to catch up, spend some time learning some of these new platforms, just a little bit extra to get a better grasp of what they're doing. We're experimenting with an asynchronous day so teachers can have time to prepare and plan.
You mentioned this earlier, but you can't just take your lesson plan for a traditional class and say, oops, I'm switching to remote. I'm gonna do that same lesson plan. It just doesn't work that way. Number one, because of technology. You can do different things in person than you can do perhaps with technology and vice versa, right? So I think that might be part of it as well. And then again, learning all of the new apps that are out there.
And we're actually meeting tomorrow to talk about how it went, whether there's value in us taking the next step potentially and picking out some additional days through the rest of the calendar to still give students the instruction but make it asynchronous or mix so that we can find some additional time for teachers to plan through this pandemic.
And there was quite a bit of discussion regarding this at the board meeting. If somebody wants to go back and rewatch the work session and board meetings,
That's right.
they are online.
We spent about 5 hours at our work session. The week before that, I mentioned that we were looking at this possibility, and the board has been very involved, and they hear our teachers as well. And so what it really comes down to is how can we find that time in this pandemic? We've even talked about it in the context of calendar, and even potentially for calendar for next year. When our board discussed next year's calendar, we're not going to make a decision until January on next year's calendar at the earliest, but we recognize that this is a different world.
And that is later. Folks should know that is a couple of months later than normal, because usually we are making a calendar decision in November, I believe.
Well, actually, no. January is
January?
actually our annual.
But don't we do
day.
it earlier?
There have been times where we do it, but it's actually on our annual agenda for January.
Okay. I thought we used to try to, so people could plan their vacations and such. Okay. All right. I'm moving on. So let's talk about, I'm going to keep it with learning for a minute before I transition into something else. We did get some feedback that, say a parent has chosen in person, but they feel like their child will do better online, or their child chose, or their family chose online, but they feel like their child will do better in person. Why can't they switch?
Well, number one, like we talked about, we've assigned teachers to the online program, so we had limits on staffing because of student-teacher numbers, student-teacher ratios. We were able to allow a few to change based on, in essence, a switch. There were a handful of folks at the online who wanted to go back to campus earlier in the semester. There were a number of folks who were on campus who wanted to go to online. So we were able to do that match and still maintain our obligation to the state to have our numbers correct, our student-teacher ratios. Now, I will tell you, Carol, we asked for a commitment for the semester. And so we're coming up on halfway through this semester, and planning takes a long time. To assign teachers, figure out how many numbers, to make sure we have the appropriate teachers in the appropriate classrooms, to make sure that we have the appropriate teachers at the middle school courses and at the high school courses teaching those classes. So we will announce next week, we're sitting here on September 22nd, we will announce next week the schedule for individuals to make a decision on what they want next semester. And that's going to be, those decisions are going to need to be made in October so that we can set those schedules. And I got to tell you one quick story about how scheduling works at the high schools. Usually scheduling for the fall starts in January because it's such a big lift to put all those schedules together for our high school students.
So that's like an 8-month time period.
It's a long window of time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we will put it out in Focus on Tuesday. If you aren't, I'm doing a plug here. If you aren't receiving our district email newsletter on Tuesdays, please go to the website at the bottom of the page. You can sign up to receive In Focus. And we do share district-wide, some school-specific information, but mostly district-wide information. I'm also going to put another plug. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram as well. So please follow us so you can stay informed.
And Carol, if I may dispel a myth.
Okay.
We've had a couple of questions from email about, well, we've heard that if we're on campus, we can't choose to go online next semester and vice versa. We are allowing our district to choose.
Okay.
And so that's, I just felt like it was important for everyone to know that choice is still going to happen in January.
You will have to make the choice, though, in October for scheduling purposes,
That's right.
though. Okay, very good. All right, so let's talk about I think there's some more myths out there and confusion. Let's talk about the responsibility of the health department and the responsibility of the school district regarding the quarantine process, perhaps, and the communication of that. And tell us where we are in all of that.
Well, so number one, we've set up our safety protocols with our return to campus plan, and those are our safety protocols. We have established those based on recommendations from health authorities, but those are our protocols. And I'm convinced, and I'm still convinced, and every day it seems like it's being reinforced, that our safety protocols are our best bet to stay on campus. And that's our safety. Now, the health department makes decisions about positive cases and quarantine. And that is the point at which the health authorities say, you've been exposed to a positive case based on our standards, their standards, which right now, as we said, are 6 feet for 15 minutes. They make that evaluation, and then they determine whether someone needs to be quarantined. As we started this school year, in our conversations with our local health department, they did not have the capacity to actually send those messages out if it was a large group of students. We had everyone's names and contact information in our system, so up to this point, we have been sending those messages out on behalf of the health department. And because we were making sure we were helping them out, even though the language said on behalf of the health department, that kind of language, it could be confusing, thinking that we were telling folks they had to stay out. What we've learned now from the health department is they now have that capacity to do that work, to do their quarantine work. And we're actually helping transition that so that the health department can communicate directly with the folks who they determine are quarantined.
Okay, very good, very good. So that should be taking effect?
Well, as we're sitting here on Tuesday, I know they're meeting at 1:30 to double check their system to make sure it works.
Okay,
and I also want to mention that the state health department gave additional help to the local health departments, knowing that this is a big lift for them.
Yeah, very good, very good. Okay, hopefully that will clear up any confusion then about really who is doing what. Let's talk about being inclusive and our work in that area and the issues that are still there, and it is a broad topic. We don't have time to cover it all, but I do think it's important for you to share with our community what we're doing and when.
Well, number one, Carol, race is obviously a big issue in our country, and it was a big issue before we were born, and it's going to continue to be a big issue. We're here on this earth a window of time, and it's our responsibility in the time we have and the leadership positions we have to help grow our capacity to serve our diverse community. I feel strongly about that. And I want to tell you also, I've mentioned this to the board more than once at our public meetings. We are going to continue to talk about this. We may make mistakes. I may make mistakes in what I say, but to avoid a mistake and not speak is a mistake, if that makes sense. I'm going to continue to talk about it because our community needs to talk about it. And so I want to acknowledge a few things. Over the years, we have had some professional developments with our teachers that haven't worked as well as we've wanted them to. In these last few months as superintendent, I've had so many conversations. I've spoken to students, I've spoken to parents, I've spoken to teachers, administrators. I've had many, many discussions. I've spoken publicly about this. And one of the things I've learned is that if you're going to do it right, if you're going to do something that can grow in a sustainable way, you really need some professional help. We've learned that over the years. And so we're in the process of exploring that to determine how to do this the right way so that we can find a sustainable program to help us grow and develop. I will tell you one piece that we've talked about. I made it a point of emphasis this year to our teachers and our administrators that every single instance of an inappropriate racial comment or inappropriate race-based behavior, it gets addressed. Our board has policies in place, and if the policies are in place and we don't implement the policies, we have wasted the board's time in establishing those policies. So that's been a point of emphasis for us, that in every case we will respond and act appropriately in discipline when appropriate for any inappropriate behaviors. Now I will tell you, related to that, we've heard some stories about times past where that may not have happened. And that's one of the reasons that I've tried to make this a point of emphasis with our teachers. I talked about this at our new teacher orientations. We were Zooming, but I made sure that I mentioned this to our new teachers, that is a point of emphasis. Likewise, on the positive side, we need to grow in an acknowledgement of it with our faculty and staff, and that's what I was alluding to about some professional development and some growth. We're going to be very deliberate about this, and we're going to make sure that what we're doing is growing and sustaining us. I can't tell you how important this is in our community, and it's going to be a journey. And like I said, I'm going to make mistakes in what I say because I think we're all growing in this. And we're going to continue to talk about it. In most every meeting that we have with our board, it's going to be mentioned because it needs to be something that we acknowledge as a community. The most recent event, we saw some social media between some students. And so from a discipline standpoint, we're going to make sure that every single one of those cases gets investigated in our administrators' discipline the most appropriately that they can. So I don't know how to reassure people more because of history, but I think it's important for me to acknowledge publicly that that's what we're working on.
So I do think it would help our families to understand. We've also seen, as this first 9 weeks has come about, like social media accounts that pop up that are very negative. Bullying, kind of harassing behaviors, and those don't just happen during the school day. So there are things that we can do and things that we can't do. I guess my point is that it takes everyone working together to be aware.
Well, you're right, Carol. But let me tell you what we've emphasized to our administrators. If there's a complaint, it will be investigated no matter what. Even if we don't have the power to discipline for something that happened over the summer or that's something that happened at night, it's going to be investigated, and we still have tools. There are parents. We can bring parents in. We need to determine the extent to which it's affected our campuses. Mm-hmm. I've seen examples where law enforcement has gotten involved. Because there are laws against certain behaviors too, obviously. Right. So we're going to use all the tools that we have in that context, even if we may not be able to, strictly speaking, discipline. Discipline includes self-discipline, includes growing and developing as a person, and that's part of what we're about in the school. And so we're not simply going to say, oh, something happened outside our jurisdiction or something, and we're not going to bother with it. We're going to investigate every single one and do the best we can in every single instance, while at the same time training our folks to recognize those instances and not minimize them.
Okay, very good. All right, we have just a couple of minutes left, actually 2 minutes left. Let's talk about some good things that are already happening this semester. We just announced, I don't even remember when because I can't keep track of time anymore, our National Merit students, 52 National Merit semifinalists.
It was funny, Carol, you and I were talking. We 52 National Merit semifinalists. It's the third straight year we've had over 50. And it's funny that we don't run through every student's name because we have too many.
We have so many.
We have so many
to honor.
National Merit semifinalists. We do celebrate the National Merit finalists at our board meetings, along with perfect ACT scores.
Yes, and we haven't even gotten to do that yet.
That's right.
Because we are not meeting in person. So our stack of perfect ACTs, that may be an event, on its own.
We may not want to put that off. We may end up with too many there.
I know. Also, I'm going to just tease, we're going to have another big announcement this week. You can't say anything about it, but go ahead and let people know that something's coming.
There are some national awards that are big deals, and we've had some national awards won by some of our schools in the past. And you are teasing another one, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, I'm kind of doing that and making you do that along with. So while we are trying to have as normal of a school year as possible, I guess, those celebrations and honors are still continuing to roll in, and so We are excited about that, and we look forward to honoring those students in person, hopefully as soon as possible.
Our students are still knocking it out. Our teachers are still knocking it out. It is harder than it's ever been, and I don't want to minimize that. We're going to continue to have to be, as one of our board members mentioned, nimble in how we respond to issues right now, and we're going to continue to do that. Every day brings a different challenge. Every time we turn a corner, we have a different challenge. But I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're here serving our students, and we're going to continue to face those challenges.
All right, Jason. Thank you. Let's do this again maybe next month.
Okay?
All right, sounds good. Thank you for joining us for the Superintendent's Report.